For this video, I will start with a question that I was asked the other day by somebody that I met recently who is a wonderful human being by the name of Joseph. He asked me about how I deal with the thoughts of, which is a pretty intense question about life, death, transplant, thinking about how it's conceivable to make plans in the future when you're not sure of what the future holds. And I think that in honor of not making this video 5 hours, I'm just going to say that I don't have an answer for that, really. I think that going through what I went through for 12 years, okay, so I was misdiagnosed for 7 years with diagnosis of pulmonary hypertension and pulmonary veno-occlusive disease, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That makes 12 years that I lived with 2 fatal illnesses. During those years, my mind, which I imagine you know if you're going through a really, really challenging time, with regard to your health specifically, that your mind has to next level itself in a way. It just has to kind of become your protector. And so I could not allow myself to focus on what I was being told, which is that I was going to die, which is that I had days to live, which is that there was nothing that could be done, which is that everything was progressive. I didn't allow that to enter my mind. I also had somebody in my life at the time who was incredibly positive and encouraging. My doggy's right here. I'm not just petting the air. Baby girl. So I had somebody who, again, helped me brainwash myself into believing that I'd get better. A friend of mine said to me, after the transplant, she's like, how do you feel? Do you feel like you need to be on antidepressants? And I was like, no, I feel so amazing. When all of this ended up in cardiac arrest, a coma, life support, and ultimately having a double lung transplant, I don't know what trauma lies beneath, but I do know that I came out of it so grateful and so happy to be alive that it kind of, my gratitude trumped all of the trauma that I could have experienced. I think I'm so conscious of the fact that I'm so lucky to be alive, but I also am conscious of this. If I had, for example, and I'm not saying that antidepressants are bad. I'm not saying that anything like this is bad for someone else. I'm just saying in my particular circumstance and the way that I feel. So it had been suggested to me quite a few times while I was sick with PH and PVOD that I be medicated, antidepressants, anti-everything, because it's very difficult for your mind to be able to conceive of the fact that you could die. And so in order to calm that, you take something to make you not have to deal with that. But I think in the dealing with that over the course of so many years, I built up the ability when I was in the hospital in the most critical state to mentally get myself through that situation. I don't know if I had not built that up, if I had, let's say, been medicated and not built that mental muscle, for so many years, I don't know if I would have survived. I don't know if I could have withstood the psychological, turmoil, I don't have a better word, the physical pain where they're sewing you up without any sort of anesthetic or number, or they just basically have to do what they need to do to you to keep you alive, and you have to take it or you die. You just have to take it. So, and right after you think the worst has happened, they come into your room and they have to do something else to you that's even worse, and you can't believe it. So the physical torture is so hard to take that I think had I not built that mental strength up for so many years, I don't know if I could have taken. So I don't know, I took a spin on antidepressants, I don't know why, but anyway, it can be hugely helpful for those that need them. So that is not what I'm saying to not take them, but I'm saying that in my case, I have understood the power that our minds have and the muscle that we can create and build, and how incredibly not only valuable, but life-saving that muscle can be. Okay, so all of this to say that when recently Joseph, this person in question, asked me the question about how I handle the thoughts of possibly dying or, things that could go wrong after transplant, I said to him a few things. So one is, and it sounds really simple and almost too simple to make sense, but I have a poster that I made, a drawing, basically I created it on whatever, one of those online creation places. So I wrote out my slogan, my tagline, or my mantra really, which is, what if everything goes right? And I look at that thing constantly, because every time a thought comes in of, oh my gosh, these are all the things that could go wrong, these are all the things that could happen, I think to myself, wait a second, what if everything does go right? And at the end of my life, I look back and I think, wow, what a shame. It went right. I wasted all this time thinking about everything going wrong. And then what was the point of the whole thing when it went right? Now, if it doesn't go right and I die or something happens to me, then I believe strongly that the meant to be factor in life is real. If that happens, then that was meant to be. That is something I had to make peace with in the hospital. It's like, when it's your time no matter what. I mean, you can be on life support, in a hospital in the ICU and being told you're going to die, and then somebody, slips and falls and hits their head out of bed and dies. Like, there are so many things that can happen that it's sort of like, live your life and let go in a way. Let go for me was like, let go and trust that there's something greater happening, and that if it's meant to be, it will. And if I'm supposed to die, then I'm going to die. But hopefully I don't die. And what if I live? And what if it all goes right? And so that's a big, helpful question. But again, the mental training from those years with pulmonary hypertension, being on oxygen, trying to find ways of doing things despite my circumstance, those years have built up my mind. So even though I'm human and I have slips and I'm like, oh my God, what if something goes wrong? And I'm petrified, right? And that thought does live with me. I constantly shoo it away and I can't just shoo it away and leave an empty space. So I have to fill that space. And I fill that with, wait a second, what if everything goes right? When I was in the hospital, it's a crazy thing to have to make peace with dying. It's something I can't put into words what that even means, but I have a huge trust in God, right? And God to me is what God is to me, right? And everybody has their own belief, whether they believe in God or not, or whatever God is to them. So to me, it was that peace with death came from me just trusting and letting my hands up like this. I mean, my hands couldn't move because I was tied down in the hospital, basically. I mean, I couldn't move. But in my spiritual sense, my hands just kind of went like this and said, okay, I trust that whatever's supposed to happen is going to happen. If I'm going to be able to go home with PH and either, there was like a 90% chance that I would just drop dead. I was like, okay, that's one option. Or if they can take me off ECMO life support. Second option, I just die because lungs never came in and that's it. Or option 3, a lung transplant, which I was petrified of because of everything I'd heard about post-transplant life, which, crazy enough, thank you God, I've not experienced. I've so far experienced the magic of post-transplant life. So I had to make peace with all 3 options in the hospital. I had to make it okay for my family if something happened to me. I had to make it okay for everyone, and I couldn't bear the thought of leaving my parents without a kid. So now I try to bring that muscle into my life and use that mind muscle in the way that I need it. I'm still have a hard time planning in the future. I'm still like, oh my God, but what if there is no future? So of course I have that difficulty with that. And when I got out of the hospital, I could plan like a day at a time. I was like, well, tomorrow I can show up for lunch. That's fine. But if it's 2 days, I don't know. I don't know if I'll still be here in 2 days. So that was then a week. I was like, all right, I can plan a week out, Then it was a month. And then as I started to trust the process after transplant a little bit more, I can plan a little bit more. And so I'm taking my time with that trust and I'm seeing how I go. And then that allows me to have a little more trust and then seeing how I go. But ultimately, psychologically, I don't think there is any benefit to living with that fear constantly in the back of your head. Well, we do live with that fear, and we all do because we're all mortal. It's not just people who've had a lung transplant. But just that thought that if it does go right, then what a waste it would have been to have focused on everything having potentially gone wrong your whole life. What a waste. And I'm so clear on the fact that life is such an incredible gift. And I don't mean to sound corny, but what a gift when you are presented with death and you are given another chance at life because somebody else died and gave you their lungs and now you're living for them and for you. And what an incredible blessing that it just puts everything into perspective. I try to let go. I try to trust. And anytime those voices come in, again, I repeat, what if everything goes right? And I think I'm just going to make a what if everything goes right poster officially and put it on my website because I think it sounds so simple, but it's so helpful to like wake up every day and go in the living room, drink my little coffee, which I couldn't drink for so many years, and see this sign. What if everything goes right? Like all day. It just does something. So the power of the mind, the beauty of trusting in something greater and taking care of ourselves. Oh, okay, I have to go because somebody just arrived. But anyway, thank you all so much for watching, and I will be back very soon with more. Okay, coming.